This is the story of a little old house, a house that has stood in what is now Hillside, New Jersey, since long before the American Revolution. It was built in 1735 by members of the Woodruff family, which was among the first group of settlers that established Elizabethtown after the land had been purchased from the local Indians. For many years it stood alone here, for the land was used as a farm to provide the necessities of life in the New World. In later years, the farm was so successful that a storefront was added to the house in order to sell the excess production of the apple orchards, grapes, and eggs. That the house still stands today is solely because the Hillside Historical Society was able to buy it from the last member of this family of Woodruffs, who had lived here in an unbroken line since they had built the house. Much in need of repair at the time of the purchase, the old homestead has been restored and maintained by the Society as a museum, with tours given every third Sunday of the month or by appointment. Inside the house, this room is arranged as it might have been in early America, with many furnishings of that period. The table in the center has uses beyond the ordinary, for its top can be tilted vertically, revealing a seat underneath, and if placed before the fireplace, the tilted top will keep cold drafts from one's back. The fireplace itself still retains the hand-forged iron crane from which cooking pots can be hung over the fire or swung away to be removed. A kettle of water was almost always hanging from it. Other once useful cooking equipment stands near the fireplace. No early American farmhouse would be complete without a spinning wheel, and this house has three, although some are incomplete. The large diameter walking wheel was used for twisting sheep fleece into strands of wool for knitting, but it lacks the spindle. The smaller treadle-operated flax wheel produced linen and cotton threads to be woven into cloth whenever the traveling weaver appeared with his loom. The thread on each loaded bobbin could be wound off from the wheel onto a rotating reel. All of this work might be done in daylight or under the dim glow of a kerosene lamp. The western part of the house is considered to be the oldest portion, and these two rooms are arranged as they might have been during the first 75 years of its existence. On the mantel is an Eli Terry clock made in 1826 by the first maker of mass-produced clocks in America. Previously, clocks were handmade or imported from England. Alongside the fireplace and chimney is a built-in cabinet containing some items donated to the house by members of the Woodruff family and its branches. This picture belonged to the Woodruffs, and so did this soup tureen. The teapot and other dishes are also donations. On a lower shelf are a couple of old bonnets, and this one was used by Emma Woodruff on her wedding day. The oval frame picture on the wall near the cabinet is of one of the Woodruffs who lived in this house. It was found in an old shed on the property, and although the frame was in poor condition, it was refinished by Matt Whitting. Another picture is that of one of the Mrs. Woodruffs. It is not certain which one, but is possibly Mrs. Charles Woodruff. A recent addition to the house has been the wooden slat blinds on the windows. Between the two front windows is a copy of the Declaration of Independence that is printed on silk cloth. Around the writing are pictures of only the first 3 presidents of our country. On an opposite wall hangs a painting of the author of that document, Thomas Jefferson, that was presented by a neighbor, Mrs. Madding. Standing beneath the painting is a table that once belonged to the 5-member Eaton family who lived in this house and operated the small general store from 1910 to 1927. On it are the family Bible of the Woodruff family and the family Bible of the Earl family. A row of chairs beneath it once belonged to the Lyons family, for whom Lyons Farms was named. In the next row, the massive wooden framed bed dominates the scene. Like many beds of that era, it has no bed spring, but instead a long single length of rope is woven through holes in the frame to form a flexible grid-like base that supports the bed clothes. This grid must be tightened now and then by the use of a bed wrench. Hiding underneath the bed are 2 ceramic chamber pots, very necessary items when it is too cold to visit the privy in one's nightdress. At the foot of the bed is a hope chest that once belonged to Caroline Eichhorn and is now used to store old clothes and linens. Another old chest is this leather-covered one owned by William Woodruff, whose initials WW are on it. It is handmade with leather-reinforced corners and inside has a decorated lining. Like the other rooms of this 2½ century-old house, this room retains its original fireplace, set diagonally in a corner. Near it is a long-handled bed warmer. On cold winter nights, its covered pan could be filled with hot coals from the fire and then slipped around under the bed covers to take off the chill. Resting on the mantel over the fireplace is a relic of the old Salem school. Here, a section of the interior wall has been cut away to reveal the brick nogging enclosed within the walls of the house. The bricks act as a form of insulation and serves to keep the building a little warmer in winter and cooler in summer. A cradle for a young child rests on the floor nearby, and close to it is a high chair that dates back to 1810. It was used by the grandfather of Arthur Woodfield. Hanging on display from this rack are many pieces of old clothing, such as this little calico child's dress, which was made in 1858 from calico purchased for 90 cents a yard. Another room in this house is set up as it might have been a kitchen about 1890, although it could have been unchanged until the late 1920s. The principal piece of equipment here is the cast iron cooking stove, in which a fire was kept burning almost constantly, as starting a new fire was a slow process. The ashes from the old fire had to be dumped by rotating the bars of the grate, using the handle kept nearby. Then a paper and wood fire was ignited in the firebox and allowed to burn until it was hot enough to burn coal. This was then added to the wood fire, and soon after the proper adjustments of the sliding drafts that controlled the amount of air admitted into the stove, there would be a fine source of heat to boil the water in the kettle resting on the stovetop. A stove such as this one supplied many small chores for the younger members of the family, for the ashes had to be removed daily from the lower compartment and taken outdoors for disposal, usually in a garden. A scuttle full of coal had to be kept nearby and had to be replenished from a larger supply of coal that was usually stored in the basement. On the few occasions when there was no fire in the stove, it had to be cleaned and stove polish applied to its surfaces to prevent rust. In this house, an outside well provided the water, which was drawn inside through a pipe attached to a hand pump. A few strokes of the handle usually brought in enough water for washing face and hands, and a bowl of hot water from the stove allowed the head of the house to shave after he had sharpened his straight razor with several passes over the leather strop. This leather strop could also serve as a disciplinary device for unruly children. Here and there in the kitchen is a variety of equipment that was used years ago, and some are not much different from modern counterparts. However, there are ice skates and sleigh bells hanging from the walls, and they are rarely seen in a present-day kitchen. The sleigh bells were a safety measure that were hung on the horse to warn others that a horse-drawn sleigh was approaching, for the snow-covered roads would muffle the sound of the horse's hooves and sleigh runners. For the days of efficient electric vacuum cleaners, a carpet sweeper was used to pick up crumbs and other fragments, and 2 or 3 times a year the carpets were taken outdoors and hung over a clothesline. A unique feature of this house is the Eaton Store Museum, so named for one of its proprietors. Built in 1900 by the Woodruffs in order to sell some of the farm's excess production, it became a neighborhood general store and also sold any items for which there was a demand. Its customers were mostly people who lived nearby, for by now the surrounding area was becoming residential instead of farmland. There were no supermarkets in those days, with everything pre-packaged for the customer to take from the shelves. Items such as sugar, butter, and coffee were delivered to the store in bulk containers and measured and weighed out by the storekeeper on a balanced scale. Coffee beans were ground to order in the hand-cranked grinder or sold as beans to be ground at home by the housewife. Many homes still did not have electricity, and kerosene lamps were a popular form of lighting. Glass chimneys could easily be broken, and replacement ones sold well. To a child, the most fascinating section of the store was the candy counter, where a variety of goodies could be had for 1 or 2 pennies. Chocolate bars required the expenditure of 5 pennies, and the lucky child who possessed that sum had an enormous decision to make as to whether it was better to buy penny candy, which might provide a larger quantity of small candy, or spend the entire fortune on 1 chocolate bar. It was indeed a difficult decision. Although the Woodruff House and Eaton Store Museum is a fine example of early American life, it also has historic significance to the township of Hillside, for it provided a meeting place for those who sought to make this area an independent community, separate from Union Township, the local governing body.